Hello, everybody.
Howdy, and here we are again, the two apostates you love to hate.
Well, we've actually gotten a lot of recent emails that people do kind of like us, so
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, it just depends on what demographic you really belong to or subscribe to.
Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for subscribing. We appreciate it very much. We've got some more stuff here to cover. And no, Orlando, we are not done with the Paradise Restored book.
No.
There was already, well, our video the other day was just already long, and so we didn't want to, cover more, but there's a lot more I want to read.
But I think people have come to appreciate that you associate this channel with long videos.
True, true.
Look, you just cannot simply and thoroughly cover a subject without putting a lot of information into the video, because there's just so much information that's involved. With topics like this and the Watchtower Babble Crap Society, because they've, well, as you can see behind us, they've just written so much. It's a gift that just keeps on giving.
I know. Well, let's start with this first, because Orlando sent me some more information, and this is from a blog on Reddit. Now, I wasn't able to find the link, but this is from Philippe. I don't even know how to pronounce that last name. I mean, in this state, it would be Kiapo.
Yeah.
About the UN and NGO, because we know Watchtower is still NGO members with the United Nations in Europe. They may not admit it in this country. And we have heard so many excuses that elders will give JW members, the rank and file, as to why they had joined the United Nations. And Mike even mentioned the other day to get a library card.
Right.
And it's like, no, that is not true. Well, of course, one of the excuses was, oh, well, Watchtower was misinformed that they had to apply to get the library card, since we know everybody can get a library card.
And there again, when you and I were questioning our cousin Elder Richard through marriage, he says, well, they joined just so they could, keep an eye on what's going on in the world. So they did not, or he did not, deny that Watchtower joined them. He knew, but he's making an excuse. Now, what's interesting about this is that if you've been a Jehovah's Witness for any length of time, like us, 42 years for me and 49 for you, you would have studied Watchtower's rhetoric prior to 1975. And that's where a lot of this really goes back to, what they were saying pre-1975 regarding the United Nations. So if you're like a born-in Watchtower in the mid to late 90s to 2000s, this is all going to sound foreign to you, and it's going to sound like we're lying to you, but that's one of the reasons why Watchtower wants to get rid of these hard copy books, because they know that the damning information is still in print and it's still available, and us ex-Jehovah's Witness YouTubers have the capability of using this to their detriment.
Now, we also know the reason they are NGO members is so they can go cry to the UN human rights courts, because they're banned in so many countries and they're undergoing abuse from so many countries. They won't tell those countries and the government and the UN that it's because of their policies as to why they're getting persecuted. They won't do that. They just want to go cry to them. Now, I'm going to put the link down below. This is from the Wayback Machine. Now, this is a copy of the letter from the Department of Public Information of NGO, a non-governmental organization section. Now, this is a letter that was dated March 4th, 2004, and they are explaining Watchtower's affiliation, their membership back then. But we've got a little bit more new information, and that's what I wanted to bring out here. So like I said, someone contacted their United Nations Department of Global Communications, okay, and I'm just going to read this. It's quite lengthy, but this is great. Thank you for reaching out to the United Nations Department of Global Communications with your inquiry. My name is Philip Kiapo, and I'm the officer responsible for the Association of Civil Society Organizations with the United Nations Department of Global Communications, as well as the engagement with faith-based organizations. Allow me to answer your question and give you some background information. First of all, please note that all organizations interested in becoming associated with the United Nations through our department must, number one, support and respect the principles of the Charter of the United States.
United Nations.
Oh, excuse me, United Nations. Number two, be a reputable civil society organization with national, regional, or international standing. Number three, operate solely on a not-for-profit basis and have tax-exempt status. That's a big question mark.
That's a big question right now, yeah.
Number four, be an established civil society organization that has been registered and operating as a not-for-profit and tax-exempt organization for at least 2 years. The association criteria mentioned above was already in place at the time the Watchtower Bible Tract Society of Pennsylvania, also incorporated in the state of New York as the Watchtower Bible Tract Society of New York, applied and was accepted for association with the then Department of Public Information. Nowadays, the Department of Global Communication. In 1991, year they applied for association with the United Nations. 1992, year they were formally associated with the United Nations Department of Public Information, until 2001, year the Watchtower Bible Tract Society requested and was granted disassociation from the United Nations following an article in the Guardian newspaper in the United Kingdom.
They got caught.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to put a file together with this information and put the link down below. The United Nations reviewed the required material submitted in 1991 by the Watchtower Bible Tract Society of Pennsylvania, considered that it met all the criteria, and approved the association with the department. Now, I'm not going to read all of this because it's quite lengthy, but they do have the resolution 1296 of 23 May 1968, which stated that an NGO shall undertake to support the work of the United Nations and to promote knowledge of its principles and activities. We did the video yesterday, and I was editing it, and it got so late last night, and I realized that I have to add this video clip in because I forgot to read something, and it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to wait till tomorrow morning. I did find the link to the Reddit post, the original one that has the full answer from the UN office, and like I said, I realized last night in editing the video that I forgot to read something very important. While we have heard reports that the organization indicated that their reason for association was to access the library, I can confirm that access to the UN library resources is not restricted to NGOs with registration or formal affiliation with the United Nations. While the United Nations Dag Hammarskjöld Library is not open to the public, back in the 1990s and 2000, researchers and interested organizations could request access for consultation of documentation, not only at the library in New York, but particularly at any of the 351 depository libraries located in 135 countries around the world. The number of depository libraries have increased throughout the years, but access to the relevant information remains the same. I can also confirm that association with the United Nations through our department or any other UN entity does not imply that such organization is incorporated into the United Nations, nor does it entitle its affiliates or employees to any type of immunity or special diplomatic or official status. Association with the United Nations, however, implies a commitment on the part of the joining entity to support and uphold the values, mission, and work of United Nations, support the agenda of the UN and the priorities of the Secretary General, and assist the UN in its mission and work of promoting the values of the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and all other core international human rights instruments, as well as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. All these elements, with the exception of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which was agreed on and adopted in 2015, were applicable when the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society applied for and maintained association with the United Nations from 1991 to 2001. I hope this above information answers your questions and give you some background into the official relationship that the organization maintained with the UN from 1992 to 2001. Now, I just want to mention the UN, and it mentioned its agenda. Well, we know the UN believes in interfaith. But for Jehovah's Witnesses and Watchtower to keep making all these excuses, and these elders lying to the members that they did it just so they could get a library card, they're liars. Liars. And like we said, we keep exposing them on this. So back to the regular video. Now it's interesting because years ago when we covered this, we had several Awake articles that were very pro-United Nations. So while in their study articles in the Watchtower, they're calling them the wild beast and, affiliated with the harlot that's riding the wild beast, in the Awake articles, they're actually pro-United Nations.
Right.
And I believe you can go to JW Facts and put in, UN, and it is on there. Most of this information should be on there, but the reason we bring this up is because we have heard of some very indoctrinated Jehovah's Witnesses denying they were members and still are with the NGO, United Nations. And it's like, this is not true. They are still affiliated.
See, the thing is even though this is seemingly older information that has been put up on YouTube, it still can have its effect in those that are, deeply disturbed over this information as far as, your Jehovah's Witness family members. Because, once again, I go back to the thing that we were all taught to have this hate and loathing for the United Nations. That it is Satan's tool, Satan's using this, and we all know the rhetoric that Watchtower used. For the older generation, that rhetoric lives right here in the front of their brain. It lives right here, so that when you come up with something such as this, even though it's old information, to them it's very new, it's very recent, and it can still have an adverse effect against that fully indoctrinated Jehovah's Witness. So that's why it's good from time to time to bring this information back to light. And now that you and I have done this a couple of times, now we have even more information, to put into a current dialogue.
Yeah, and another reason we bring that up and wanted to, cover more in here is because some that I'm going to be reading here is talking about this very thing, about having the mark of the wild beast. Now, we did a video a while back about the, mark of the wild beast, for Vinny.
That's right.
So, it kind of all goes in together. And I want to mention that a very dear friend of ours, Truth Shark, he woke up over the UN thing.
That's right.
That's what woke him up. So as soon as he was showed the proof.
For a fact.
Yeah, that's what woke him up.
You know, there wasn't any apparent association with, right, Jane Doe? Apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we're going to go back to this. On page 350, the subheading, Loyalty to God Transcends Family Ties. And I'm not sure if I'm going to read all of this, but I'm just going to hit on a couple of things here I notice. Paragraph 15. And it must occur in that day is the utterance of Jehovah of armies, that I shall cut off the names of the idols out of the land, and they will no more be remembered, and also the prophets and the spirit of uncleanness I shall come to pass out of the land. And it must occur that in case a man should prophesy any more, his father and his mother, the ones who caused his birth, must also say to him, You will not live, because falsehood is what you have spoken in the name of Jehovah. And his father and his mother, the ones who caused his birth, must pierce him through because of his prophesying. Zechariah 13:2 and 3. And we know that's how they feel about the apostates, even if it's their own family members.
Or even if it's their only child.
Yeah, exactly.
Pierce them through.
Yeah. Over on page 351, paragraph 16. As regards our time, since the year 1919 CE, Jehovah of Armies is here speaking about the spiritual estate of his restored remnant of spiritual Israelites. That's 144,000. Because this God who requires exclusive devotion to himself has caused the names of the idols to pass out of the land of their relationship with him, they now refuse to worship the wild beast out of the sea and also the image of the wild beast. Now the reason I wanted to read that is look at, they are associated, they are members of the wild beast. They now refuse to worship the wild beast out of the sea and also the image of that wild beast. Or if we say it plainly, without the use of those Bible symbols of political institutions, the spiritual Israelites refuse to worship the political state as a whole on a world scale and also the League of Nations and its successor, the United Nations. In this way, they avoid suffering the divine penalty for carrying the mark of the wild beast. Oh, but we don't worship them. We're just members to find out what's going on and to apply for relief from being persecuted.
Okay, right there, I can debunk that apologist, Jehovah Witness apologetic statement. Okay, you may not worship the beast, but that's no different in theology of a Jehovah Witness going in to use a swimming pool at a YMCA. You may not be a member of the YMCA just to go in and swim, but if you get caught going in swimming, guess what? You're worshiping whatever religion owns the YMCA. It's the same principle, Watchtower, Jehovah's Witnesses. It's the same principle.
Yeah. Now,
they don't get it.
Now, we mentioned a while back in a video, governing body Anthony Morris is in one of the COVID updates, and he's saying we are going to obey the superior authorities, you know, and then they read that scripture in Romans. Oh, well, as long as it doesn't go against God's laws, we are going to follow the superior authorities. Okay, like I said, Jehovah's Witnesses believe Satan is the God of this system. That means he is in control of all of these governments. It is called Satan's organization. So you're going to obey his organization until it goes against God's laws. Well, I call foul and hypocritical liars, because didn't Jesus tell you to go therefore and make disciples? So you should be preaching no matter what. And yeah, I know you're doing it by letters and phone calls, which reminds me, I was talking to a friend this morning. She has a circuit overseer's wife calling her, preaching at her, and she has nicely asked her several times to stop calling her. Well, guess what? The circuit overseer's wife will not stop. So my friend said, I finally had to block her and all of the other JWs who keep calling because they're making a menace of themselves. When you ask them nicely to stop calling you, they keep it up just so they can get their hours, because they know that it has been drilled in all of our heads from the minute we became Jehovah's Witnesses that you have to get out there and preach no matter what, or you're going to be killed at Armageddon by your God Jehovah.
Well, there again, Kim, this becomes so simple that, you know, anybody can debunk all of this with just a little common sense and a little thinking. Do you want to continue on with this before I continue with the thought that I'm going to present here?
Well, I've got more here.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so going on in paragraph 16. Because they have approached a Mount Zion and a city of the living God, heavenly Jerusalem, and they are enrolled in the heavens, their citizenship exists in the heavens. So they do not yield themselves to the delirium of earthly nationalism. Or I'm thinking pandemic panic, fear. You know, the friend I was talking to this morning, she said, her mom said, us Jehovah's Witnesses, you can't come over and visit me because the elders are telling us not to have any contact with anyone. So they're doing a shelter in place and having food delivered to them by the grocery store. It's crazy. So they're involved in this delirium.
Yep.
They do not render any worshipful gestures or attitudes to nationalistic idols. Idol names are not remembered. The loyal spiritual Israelites praise the name of Jehovah as the true God in heartfelt, full allegiance to Him. Paragraph 17. Jehovah has also caused the false prophets and spirit of uncleanness to pass out of the spiritual estate of His restored remnant. Not when they were preaching 1975 as the end.
Nope.
That made them false prophets.
That's right.
All of them. Jesus Christ forewarned us concerning this conclusion of the system of things, that false Christs and false prophets will arise and will give great signs and wonders so as to mislead, if possible, even the chosen ones. And a bunch of scriptures. The Apostle John warned, beloved ones, do not believe every inspired expression or every spirit, but test the inspired expression to see whether they originate with God, because many false prophets have gone forth into the world. So, Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're not going to follow this, if you're not going to go check out to see if activists are lying, whether it's true or not, you cannot defend Watchtower and their hierarchy if you do not go check it out yourself. See? Go test out every expression. We're not claiming to be inspired, but just go check out the information and research it. Oy vey. Accordingly, there would be need among the restored remnant of the spiritual Israelites to guard against false prophets invading or rising up in the midst of their spiritual estate on earth. And I mean, there's just so much in these few pages, and I know we covered the religious hypocrisy exposed subheading the other day. But, I mean, it's just amazing, you know, what they printed here. And this is why they have to get rid of this older literature. Because it condemns them.
Exactly.
It condemns them.
While they're trying to point the finger at Christendom, they're actually self-condemning. See, and when you're a group of religious people like the Jehovah's Witnesses, especially prior to 1975, you feel like you can get away with a whole lot because guess what? The end's going to come in 75.
Yeah.
What an appropriate time for Jehovah to bring the end, because it marks the end of mankind, 6,000 years being on earth.
Yeah. Oh, but they didn't say anything that meant, you know, 75 was going to be the end. Yeah. On page 352 of this book, paragraph 20, any attempted interpretation of prophecy, if it proved to be incorrect in the light of historic events And the clearer understanding of the Bible, you know, like 1975 never happened.
Well, wait a minute. What about 607?
What about 1914? That generation will by no means pass away.
So, any attempted interpretation of prophecy, that's exactly what you knuckleheads tried to do with Jesus's, you know, time of the end. Lord, tell us when will be the presence, and you'll see earthquakes and wars, and Watchtower attempted to tie all of that to 1914 based on 607, and then they attempted to say, well, that generation will not pass away until all these... Do you not see, Jehovah's Witnesses, why this information is so damning to you people?
This is the important part. Okay? I'm going to read that part again. Any attempted interpretation of prophecy, if it proved to be incorrect in light of historic events and the clearer understanding of the Bible was corrected, regardless of who had offered the interpretation, like your governing body, the faithful slave, loyalty to God and to His inspired word was the issue here to be met. So as an illustration of the loyalty required, even if a fleshly son should offer a wrong interpretation of divine prophecy and should persist in it, like the governing body and faithful slave, like a false prophet, then his own fleshly parents in their loyalty to God would have nothing further to do with him on a religious basis. So this is telling you, Jehovah's Witnesses, you need to shun your governing body, the faithful slave, and have nothing more to do with them. Disfellowship them.
Well, look at what they say right here. I mean, this goes right back to what they did recently. Like a false prophet, then his own... Oh, wait a minute. Let me back up just a little bit. Even if a fleshly son should offer a wrong interpretation of divine prophecy and should persist in it, like a false prophet. Hey, you want to see how Watchtower persisted in that generation will not pass away? Oh, now it's an overlapping generation. Come on, Jehovah's Witnesses. Meeny, tickle, parson. They're telling you right there, if they persist. But that's what they did with their overlapping generation nonsense. They're persisting in a false interpretation of 1914. This is so easy now.
Going on. Christian parents could not do as under the Mosaic Law covenant, namely have him put to death, but they could pronounce him spiritually dead to themselves in spite of their parenthood of him physically. In this way, figuratively speaking, they must pierce him through because of his prophesying. Oy vey. With their full consent, such a false prophet would be expelled, disfellowshipped from the Christian congregation. By such loyalty on the part of all members of the restored remnant, the prophet of falsehood would be made to pass out of their land.
So, if these Jehovah's Witnesses are going to be loyal members of the restored remnant, the prophet, you know, the one that said, you know, the generation that will not pass away, the generation of 1914 will not pass away until all these things occur, including the Great Tribulation. You need to get those false prophets out of your organization. But hey, if you don't do it, then who are you really being loyal to?
The last sentence here in paragraph 21. The God-given spiritual estate must be maintained as a land where clean, scriptural living is carried on. Persons spiritually and morally unclean must be disfellowshipped therefrom. What about your horrific abuse problem that you keep trying to hide and fight tooth and nail in the courts and before these commissions and with the governments?
See, here's the issue that's created for, you know, the rest of the anointed remnant. See, you've all been convinced that as the anointed remnant, you know, the spiritually adopted sons of God, you think that you are in position to make changes with your governing body. But you're not. You know why? Because this is business. It's got nothing to do with the spiritually elect of Jehovah or his son Jesus. Because anyone who claims to be of the anointed remnant, you cannot walk into the Watchtower Brooklyn headquarters and depose those 8 governing morons. You can't do it. It doesn't matter what they write right here, because this is business. This is the business of religion, not your spiritual well-being. And these guys know it. They've always known it. Rutherford even knew it the day he did the hostile takeover. He knew exactly what he was doing, because it's not a spiritual religion. It's a physical business. That's why he could say it's a snare and a racket.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Now, we mentioned, you know, the thing about the blood fractions the other day, and we've gotten a lot of comments and emails. And I want to thank the person that sent me the letter about blood transfusion for pets, because I had forgotten all about that. Because I seen it in Beastzilla years ago. And I think we had covered it on our first channel, you know, in one of our blood videos. But I just wanted to mention it again. This one is dated April 6, 1963. Dear sister, I'm not going to mention her name. Of course, this letter is all over the internet. Your recent letter is before us, and we are pleased to give it consideration. You would like to know if it would be a violation of God's law to give a blood transfusion to a pet you have. In considering the scriptures, it is noted that unless blood was under certain circumstances used on the altar, it was to be poured out on the ground and covered over with dust. Okay, that's the Mosaic law, because they quote Leviticus. To use blood for transfusion purposes, even in the case of an animal, would not be proper. The scriptures are clear in showing that blood should not be eaten. That would apply in the case of a human naturally, but it would also apply to this question of giving a blood transfusion to a pet that is under the jurisdiction of a Christian. So it would not be scripturally proper to do so. Okay, so Mike and I were discussing this morning, and I love XJW, Elder Wife Jane Doe's fish tank. I know it's a huge tank. I wouldn't have one that huge, but I love that tank. And we've had fish tanks our entire lives, and we haven't had one for about 10 years now. And it's like, okay, you know what? I want a fish tank. So we're talking about getting this fish tank, and I'm thinking of getting one beta, you know, in a smaller tank and all of this. And then I found out, oh my God, the betta food has blood in it. And they have something called blood worms. There's blood in their food. And I asked Mike, I said, okay, how many Jehovah's Witnesses have betas and feed them this food and don't know there's blood in it? Wouldn't that be the same principle?
Well, you know, I knew when I was growing up I wanted to raise sea monkeys, but I couldn't because you fed them blood.
Yeah.
It's based on this nonsense.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is how, I mean, it just gets unbelievable. Okay, now, I have dogs. And they will catch mice, gophers, squirrels, whatever they can get their hands on. They will eat it raw with the blood. How is that any different than giving an animal a blood transfusion?
Well, here's the bullshit qualifier. You know, naturally, a blood transfusion to a pet that is under the jurisdiction of a Christian.
Well, if you own a betta, guess what?
It's under your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
You know, this is just crazy the way these people think. It really is, because, you know, living in Arizona, I remember helping a JW field dress an elk he had killed. He had put in his cooler. And
sterile service.
Yeah, and he actually was raising worms for fishing. And he did not hang the elk carcass above the bed of worms because the residual blood would be dripping in and feeding the worms. Come on, people. That's ludicrous. That's
well, the worms were under his jurisdiction.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, yeah. The worms are even though he's going to use the worm and kill it to catch a fish. So you're eating a fish that has now been fed blood. So how does that that, you know, fish being fed blood, eating the worm, not, you know, become some sort of fraction of fish.
I've got one even better.
Oh, please do.
Okay. If a Christian has parasites that are feeding on the blood in your digestive system, they are under your jurisdiction.
You see, friends, this is so laughable in this day and age. You know, just getting back to a previous point, you know, this is how Jehovah's Witnesses will not think things through when it comes to the Bible. They will use the story of Jesus going into the wilderness and being tempted by the devil. And what does the devil do? Well, if you bow down and give me one act of worship, I will give you all these kingdoms and their glory. That shows the Christian, and particularly Jehovah's Witnesses, that Satan is in control of the government.
And the God of this system.
And the God of this system, exactly. Now, in 3.5 years' time into the future, Jesus dies, gets resurrected, you know, walks on the earth for a number of days, and then just before he goes to heaven, he says, all authority under heaven and earth has been given to me. How did that power transfer from Satan to Jesus? And yet the best Jesus could do was, well, go preach and make disciples. Now here comes the clincher. If all authority was given to Jesus under heaven and earth, then why does he relinquish it back to the authorities in Romans chapter 13 where Paul says, be obedient to the... How did that power transfer, people? How? Tell me. I mean, you've got to ask, how did Jesus Christ lose that power once he went back to heaven to where the Apostle Paul says, be obedient to the superior authorities, because there is no authority except by God.
Well,
So why does Jesus give all of that authority and power back to the governments that harm us?
because then in Psalms, doesn't it say that he would be ruling in the midst of his enemies?
Go ahead.
That's not really ruling.
That's not ruling.
If your enemy, Satan, is still in control of this world, you are not ruling.
That's a dichotomy.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the term president-elect when it hasn't been certified.
When it hasn't been certified or he has...
Don't get him started on that. Okay, I just wanted to cover a few things. Going back to the blood. Okay, now Anthony Morris, I believe it was, in one of the COVID updates, said they would not be going back to the Kingdom Hall or preaching until there was a vaccine. Okay? The vaccine is made from the blood fractions of those who have had COVID. It's made from their antibodies. So are witnesses going to refuse this vaccine, or are they going to take it because it's only a fraction? We don't know. That's up to them.
Well, you know, the more you see Jehovah's Witnesses become part of interfaith, the more they're going to follow that dynamic, the more they're going to follow that concept of interfaith.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a choice at this point.
Now, one other thing I wanted to mention is in talking to my friend this morning, her mom is still very much indoctrinated, and a friend of my mother, so that's how I hear things through the grapevine. But my friend did say that it was announced last night at the midweek meeting that there is a new book being released, and it's only going to be available to publishers that are in good standing and currently going to Zoom meetings. Now, I went on jw.org and I couldn't find anything on that. So if anybody has heard anything about that, please, mention it in the comments down below, so we can get some validation on that. Because, like I said, this is hearsay, from my friend that got it from her JW mom. And we know she's not the most reliable because she's up there in years, about like my mom, and doesn't quite hear everything correctly. Especially the part of it's okay to accept blood fractions now.
Yeah.
And she let, her husband die.
Yeah.
So
exactly, they don't think things through.
yeah. Well, the elders weren't much help of the HLC because they're there and say, no blood at all. It's right in the God's love book.
Yeah.
Remain in God's love book.
See, they don't read with any
understanding,
comprehension.
Yeah.
They don't read with even any effort to try to understand. It's like, no. And actually, Jane Doe and I were talking about this very thing this morning. Even the men in Watchtower, especially if you're on the, one of the low rungs of the ladder, when the Apostle Paul writes to the Christian congregation, and he says, it is my desire for the women to learn in silence, they shouldn't teach. We all know what he means. You women, sit down, shut up, learn in silence. Do you Jehovah's Witnesses, do you even begin to think that through? Because allegedly, at that time in history, when the Holy Spirit was poured out, was it not poured out upon the women? Would not the women also prophesy? And yet Paul's telling these women to sit down, shut up, and learn in silence. But by extension, if you're on the low rung of the ladder in Watchtower as a male, you're being told the same thing. Sit down, shut up, and learn in silence. You don't dare question anything. And then even when you become a ministerial servant like I did, you think you're starting to grow up here now. You think you're starting to be somebody in this organization. So now you start questioning things. And guess what? Brother Brooks, sit down, shut up, learn in silence until you become an elder. And even then, you have the circuit overseer that comes by and says, Brother Brooks, sit down, shut up, and learn in silence.
Yeah, don't be criticizing anything. Don't be asking questions.
Yeah, and you guys, you Jehovah's Witnesses cannot even begin to comprehend how that book that you worship, that also becomes a secondary God to you people, that you just don't recognize in the hands of wrong people what that book is capable of doing to your human life.
Yeah. Now, something else I wanted to mention. We got an email from YouTube, and they are going to be changing some of their policies in terms of service. It sounds like things are going to be more difficult, some things that we won't have control over. So we just wanted to share this with everybody and let everybody know. Now, I will say that I try my best to go in and change to where there is no ads in the middle of our videos, because I hate that myself.
I do too.
You'll be watching a good documentary and they start having these commercials every 5 minutes, and sometimes you can't skip them. I hate that myself. So, I try to do the settings on our videos. But I did notice that YouTube is going back to all of our older videos where I didn't specifically set it, and they're putting ads everywhere. So that was not me. But I wanted to read this, and also for you YouTubers, maybe some of you in other countries, you may have gotten a little bit different, terms of service or whatever. But I wanted to read this. You're receiving this email because we're updating the YouTube terms of service. Now I want to remind everybody, YouTube is owned by Google. Now, Google, Twitter, and Facebook are under fire right now. They're in Senate judicial hearings right now. And if you get a chance, go to YouTube and put in the Senate judicial hearings on these big tech social media. I mean, it's disturbing what is coming out. It really is.
You have to comprehend that what these giant techs are doing as they are making a conservative, concentrated effort to shut down people's voices. And there's a particular group of people that have been targeted in this because this specific group's ideologies doesn't fit their socialism.
Yeah. To clarify our terms and provide transparency to our users, these changes shouldn't significantly alter your access or use of the YouTube service. A summary of the changes. Facial recognition restrictions. The terms of service already state that you cannot collect any information that might identify a person without their permission. While this has always included facial recognition information, the new terms make that explicitly clear. YouTube's right to monetize. YouTube has the right to monetize all content on the platform, and ads may appear on your videos from channels not in the YouTube Partner Program, which means they now can put ads on anything they want that is content under, the YouTube service. Royalty payments and tax withholding. For creators entitled to revenue payments, such as payments will be treated as royalties from a U.S. tax perspective, and Google will withhold taxes where required by law. So, for those of us that legally pay our taxes here in this country, this was no biggie to us because,
we understand that.
Yeah, we understand that,
Yeah.
and we take a little bit out each month so that we can pay our taxes on this income at the end of the year. But there's going to be a lot that are upset by this because they're used to getting the full amount.
Yeah, and when I saw this come in this morning and recognizing what's happening with the Senate Judiciary Committees going on right now, that Google, Twitter, and Facebook are having to deal with, I see this as a preemptive move because YouTube is tied right in with these people.
Oh yeah, if they're owned by Google, YouTube has been charged with censorship also.
Right.
There are several that speak out, and they're shut down, demonetized, and all of that. And we've been seeing it for a while now.
Mark Dice is one such channel. So when I read this, I'm thinking ahead that those guys in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee right now are going to have to follow in line with this.
Yeah, exactly. And what was disturbing about especially Facebook and Twitter being questioned is they were asked about specific software that identify users and their accounts. And they said they didn't know anything about their software. I'll have to meet with my team. You run a multi-billion-dollar social media company like this and you're not aware of the software and the information it's collecting?
Kim, did you just hear what you just said?
Yeah.
That's the same thing as the Watchtown Bible Craft Society coming out with that 1984 reference Bible with all the footnotes, not knowing
What's in there?
what's in that book. Come on, Jehovah's Witnesses. It's the same cult identity. You cannot spend years putting together a reference Bible like they did and not know that this is all a bullshit propaganda technique.
Well, look it. I called Bethel several years ago when they came out with that article about not having anything to do with your disfellowship family members, not even emailing them to find out if they're okay. I called Bethel on that twice, because the first time he hung up on me. But I kept asking them, and the second one, he was not aware of any article. I even gave him the article and he read it, and he's like, oh, well, I have no comment on that. And I said, what about in your Bible? At the time it was the old Rusty Shank, where in the term in Timothy, I believe it uses the term mentally diseased.
Yep.
I said, that's a very derogatory term. Oh, well, I know nothing about that. I says, you don't read your own Bible?
Interfaith, that's why they took it out of their Bible.
But you can see, they lie. Watchtower is just like, these guys being questioned before the Senate. And I wanted to read the last paragraph here. Bold print. Please make sure you read the updated terms carefully. The new terms will take effect on November 18th, 2020, which was yesterday. So I got this notice this morning, and it's already taken effect yesterday.
Oh, that means they're probably going to take this video down.
For users in the U.S., and similar changes to our terms of service will be made outside the U.S. in 2021. By continuing to use YouTube after this date, you are agreeing to the new terms. If you would like more information, visit our help center, which is no help whatsoever.
No, it's no help.
Because they actually, right from the guy of Twitter's own mouth, he took an oath before the Senate Judiciary Committee that, he would tell the truth, nothing but the truth, and all of that. And they brought up their own guidelines, and they asked him, did you allow this post that was allowed over the president's, return, tax returns? I know I'm not going to get too political because they'll shut us down. And they allowed that tweet to go around all over the place. But yet, when something else is brought out by a newspaper that has been around for 200 years about a certain laptop, guess what? That one was shut down. And they asked him, why?
Why the difference?
You're posing as a publishing company, as an editor.
That's the issue with this.
So watch those hearings, guys. It will blow your mind, and you will see what is going to be happening in this country now.
Yeah. Well, there again, that first post that you were referring to regarding the tax returns, it was identified as being illegally obtained.
It was a felony to allow that post because they did not have the president's permission. That was a felony. But yet they allowed that post, and yet one with evidence from a reputable newspaper, they shut that down, and the newspaper's account was shut down. They could not even get into it.
See, there again, it's not a matter, friends. You've got to sit back and process what you're seeing. It's not a matter of having the true and proper religious view of the Bible. It's not a matter of being able to take the Bible and, make it contradict itself. It's not a matter of having this left-wing political view or a right-wing political view. It's a matter of being honest.
Yeah.
It's a matter of being honest.
And transparency.
Yeah. It's just like that scripture in the Bible that the Watchtower Bible Crap Society uses that Paul talks about. The children of God are identified by this, and the children of the devil are identified by this. Go back and read that scripture, because see, Watchtower uses that to give themselves authority as the anointed remnant, but that's not what that scripture's about. It's all about honest and dishonest. That's what that scripture's about. Being honest and or dishonest. That's how you can identify the children of God, because they're honest-hearted people from the get-go, in spite of what this book says or in spite of what the political agenda is. See, it's not hard.
And when you go back to the IICSA website and look at the documents, the submissions that has been going back and forth between Watchtower and the Commission, you can see some of it is redacted, and that has been our complaint all along. Watchtower, just be honest. Be transparent. Stop trying to hide what you are saying and doing.
That's right.
And that's our biggest beef. And it isn't just, Watchtower. It's this entire world. Just be honest of what is really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and
but they won't.
And be honest with what you read.
Yeah.
It's not difficult anymore.
Yeah, be honest about your affiliation with the NGO. You know what? I don't care if you're a member of the NGO, but don't go telling your rank and file and telling your elders to tell the rank and file that they carefully tweak the wording. If you look at anything, these court documents and everything, Watchtower carefully tweaks the wording so that it gives the impression of one thing when it's actually something different.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's
lying by omission.
When you're this awoke, it's very, very plain to see what's really going on. Or it's easier to see what's about to come down the pike also.
Yeah, exactly.
See, like I was having a conversation with Jane Doe this morning, with the
sweetie.
With the current political fervor that's going on right now, stop and comprehend something. What's going on right now isn't really about what's happening right now. It's about what's going to happen in 2 years from now with the midterm elections.
Yeah.
Because some people could potentially lose a tremendous amount of authority when it comes to the House of Representatives. It's not about right now. It's about 2 years from now. Just like all of these governors now that are forcing us into lockdown and everything else, do you think when I go out and vote for 2 years that I'm going to vote for this same Democratic governor? No, I'm not. Because she's already harmed us. She's ruined Thanksgiving. She's ruined Christmas. I mean, do you really think that the people are going to be willing to put you back into power? No!
Well, since you brought that up, I just want to tell everybody, share the story of why Thanksgiving is ruined, and it isn't just our family, it's many others. Our son works for a shop in the city, and one of the workers was sick, so she stayed home, and she got tested, and her test for COVID came back negative. So she was feeling better. The boss said, can you come back to work? I really need you right now. Because she's the only office girl they have. So she was still a little bit sick, but she went back to work. In the lunchroom, she took her mask off and was eating lunch and talking and laughing with everybody else. And I believe there's probably between 20 and 30 workers. So they're all in the lunchroom talking. Okay? She got a second test because they tell you in the paperwork that if you get a negative test, it may be a negative,
a false positive,
a false negative.
It is. Yeah, right.
So to get tested again in 5 days. So she did. Okay? It came back positive. Okay, so which one do you believe? But the point being is now our kids are having symptoms because James brought it home to Shyla. She hasn't been anywhere, you know, because she's able to work online. She hasn't been anywhere. They order and have their groceries delivered in the city and everything else. So she hasn't been anywhere. So James brings us home, and now they're both having symptoms. They went and got tested. They both got negative results on COVID. So now they have to go back tomorrow and test again. But because of where they had to go for the testing, they're around sick people. They have to automatically quarantine for 2 weeks because of the chance that they might have it. That means Thanksgiving is a ruin for us.
And there again, it really doesn't matter what the governors mandate, this and that. Is that in this particular instance, it's the ignorance of the shop owner.
Yeah, because as soon as James got his negative test, the supervisor says, oh good, we'll see you tomorrow at work. He still has symptoms, and they have to go back for their second test. Now he told them, look, you know, the hospital where I had the testing said I have to automatically quarantine for 2 weeks. He says, no, you're coming back to work tomorrow. So now, if James has symptoms, he's infecting everybody else. Do you guys see how this is just insane? Now the governor has declared, and we had to turn our cell phones off yesterday because we kept getting alerts. Shelter in place, extreme COVID danger. You know, we had like almost 2,900 cases in 1 day.
They're not even testing. They don't have the capability right now to test that many people in this state because they've already shut down the testing centers.
Most of the testing centers are shut down. So we're trying to figure out how in the world are they doing all these testing.
How are you coming up with these numbers?
Now our kids actually had to wait 3 to 5 days, business days, before they got their test results. And now they have to go back. So how are they doing all of these tests? I didn't even know there was that many in New Mexico, because I think we're already up over, you know, a tremendous amount of people being tested. But the thing is everybody's wanting to be tested so that they can go have Thanksgiving with their family.
Right. Exactly.
But yet the governor is saying no one, you know, no more than, I think it's 2 families can get together for Thanksgiving, and, you know, no more than 10 people. Well, there's a lot of people that aren't paying attention to that and just going to go have Thanksgiving anyway.
There's a lot of people right now behind the scenes telling Governor Dumbass to, you know, put it where the sun doesn't shine because they're going to go visit their family anyways.
Yeah. But the point being is, I understand, you know, they think it's going to help slow down the virus. You know, obviously this is the second wave. But, you know, the governor's freaking out because there's so many testing positive. She's actually shutting down businesses like Walmart's. One of the Walmarts in Albuquerque just got shut down because 4 or more workers have tested positive. So she shut the entire Walmart down. Well, you can imagine what that causes. It's causing panic. Because now, oh my God, there's only, 2 other Walmarts in town. Oh, they're all out of toilet paper. So guess what? The shelves are emptying again.
So how do you like what socialism tastes like?
Well, I don't know, but I don't care.
You don't get it.
Well, I don't care what political affiliation you are. This is just plain dumbassery. It really is.
It's just a small taste of what socialism is.
Well, I had to go to Walmart to get supplies since we're going to be sheltering in place for 2 weeks now. Thanks to Governor Dumbass. When I got to Walmart, they have a line to wait because only 75 people can go in at a time. The line was clear down the front of the building and down around the corner to where they have the drive-in pharmacy. And it has marked on the cement 6 feet increments. They weren't following that. No. Here's a family trying to bunch together in their area. The kids are running all over the place and coughing and everything else. It does no good. It does no good. And this is what some of us were talking about in line. In fact, the lady in front of me turns to me and she says, I am so sick of all the stupidity going on right now. It's like, I know.
Yep.
I know. And the thing is, let's just say I am carrying the virus since I already had it, I think. And, sometimes get a little congestion and stuff. I don't know if I have it or not. I'm not going to go get tested because it's horrible. But, anybody can be walking around as a carrier. They tell you, well, how do you know who's carrying it and who isn't?
They don't get it. They don't understand the fear-mongering.
Yeah. See, and now everyone at the shop where James works has the potential of being infected. So, there's something seriously wrong. The system just isn't working. And I'm not going to blame the government like everybody else wants to, because it's the governors, the local governors that are making these rules. It's the people not following the rules. It's these businesses not following the rules. So, what are you going to do?
There again, if you take the time to look at a balanced view of the news that's out there, you will come across some statistics that show the state of California that practiced all the lockdowning
and still are,
and the state of Texas that did not implement all the lockdowning, that the numbers are relatively the same. You got to look at the news from a balanced perspective. If you just watch one news media, if you just look at one religious ideology like Watchtower, then you're not going to know what the other side has to say.
Yeah.
That's how cults manipulate people's minds.
So thank you for listening to our venting, our ranting, because, we just look at the stupidity going on, around us, and it's just unbelievable. And most people you talk to when I'm out and about in this area feel the same way. They feel the same way. This is ridiculous. People are still going to get together no matter what the governor says.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. And all these people getting tested, and you get a letter saying it's negative, and then they're out and about going back to work. Later. And then guess what? Now they're testing positive and still sick going to work.
Almost like that's done by design, huh? You're negative. Just go back to work. 4 or 5 days. Oh, you've got it. Now you've infected everybody. So everybody in the small business community has to now go home. Does that hurt the big tech giants? Does that hurt the big boxes? The big box stores? Does this hurt the little guy?
Well, the governor shut down the Walmart there in Albuquerque and all. So
yeah, but that doesn't matter because there's 10 other stores in Albuquerque that bear the brand Walmart. Jeez.
Yeah. It just gets crazy. So
think for yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's what this is really going to have to come down to. You being able to think for yourself. And that's the same thing when it comes to Watchtower. Think for yourself.
So, thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to vent and rant.
Thank you for staying to this point. Because I would imagine by now several people, I'm done watching these apostates we hate to love.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm not for either side in this political battle, but all I know is I see what's going on. I see what's going on. I see what might happen. And it's upsetting. It's upsetting. So, anyway, all right, we will end it there. And you all have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.